Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of your favorite YouTube podcast, Garbage Time Takes. Back after a 1 week hiatus, as always, with me today are Dennis Weaver
That's right.
and Bobby Epler.
Let's run it.
Where other place to start than in the MLB, Dennis? Where other place to start?
That's
The
right. That's
once
right. It's that time of year. It's
the
that time of year.
the once proud first place in the NL Central Cincinnati Reds have free fallen to third place. 2.5 back, the Milwaukee Brewers.
Okay. I'm gonna
Nick
stop you right
Kroll
there.
decided to stand pat at the trade deadline, not wanting to mortgage the present for the future, or the future for the present, whichever way that saying is supposed to go. And pretty much admitting that the Reds are ahead of schedule, and whatever happens the rest of the way this season is the cherry on top of the
Which we
already
are.
valuable development that the young players are getting. Dennis, no moves were made at the deadline. You've fallen back a little bit in the standings, currently out of the last wild card spot. Your thoughts?
I would like to. Okay. All right. I would like to start by saying that everything that Derek just said in reference to the Cincinnati Reds record standing in the division in the wild card race is the exact same case for his highly touted Chicago Cubs. We are literally tied. 2.5 games out of the division and a half game out of the wild card. Not to mention the fact
We did not
that
free fall out of
Nick
first
Kroll's correct.
place. We didn't free fall out of
Okay,
first
all right,
place. We haven't even been this close to first place since
correct.
April.
You're, and there was a point in this time in this season a couple months ago in which we were nowhere close to first place either, and we got hot at the
I
right
was
time.
I was
And you know
waving
what?
the white flag.
I'm exactly. And now look at you. And so I'm not going to sit here and wave the white flag here on August 10th because come September 20th, who knows where this standings what these standings in the NL Central and the rest of the National League look like. The thing about it is that teams in Major League Baseball have success. We saw it with the Philadelphia Phillies last season. If they get hot at the right time, a lot can happen. And right now the Chicago Cubs are hot. They're a really good team right now. And it will not last through the end of October. It will not. You heard it from me first. There's no team that goes on a 2.5 month hot streak, and so I'm glad that they're getting hot right now because that means they're going to cool off by the end of September. I don't care about the schedule. You're going to pull up the schedule.
I'm
I
not
don't
gonna
give a
pull up the
crap.
schedule. I'm not gonna pull up the schedule, Dennis.
I'm gonna pull up
The
the schedule.
Cincinnati Reds have just as good of a chance of making the playoffs at this point as do the Chicago Cubs, and if they don't, Nick Kroll is right. We are ahead of schedule. Nobody expected this. I had this team at nearly 100 losses this season, and we are, even with the free fall, as Derek put it, far clear and away of a 100 loss season. I mean, just overall already exceeding expectations to every corner of it, and no matter what happens the rest of the way, this season will be a success. Derek, your thoughts?
I just had one qualm to take with your point about no team getting hot for 2.5 months and making a run through the playoffs. Des, can you remind me who won the 2021 World Series by chance? Not last year, the year prior.
2020, 2021. uh Atlanta.
That's correct, Dennis. That is absolutely correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Dennis, would you like to take a
Yeah,
guess?
I remember that season. I remember that season.
Would you
I
like to
remember
take
that
a
season. They
guess
were,
at
yep.
what their record was at the All-Star break?
It was really bad. It was like not even 500.
Correct. They were 44 and 45, Dennis. They were 44 and 45.
Yeah.
Would you like to take a guess as to how many games above 500 they were entering the postseason?
I don't know, 10.
They were. I'm trying to do quick math here.
Here's the thing.
What's 88
That's fine.
wins? What's 88 wins? 6? Seven games
6.
above 500.
No, 7.
7 games above 500, Dennis. And you're telling me the Cubs can't
That's
make a 2.5 month run in
that's
a
fine.
very, 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 very weak NL Central, Dennis?
Derek, Derek, you're run the tape from like a month and a half ago in which Derek was crying that the season was over, the Chicago Cubs were dead in the water. I mean,
Well,
Bobby, can I get
well,
some input here?
to be fair to me, Jameson
Now they're World
Taillon,
Series champions.
Jameson
Now they're
Taillon.
World Series champions.
We're okay.
Get them a flag. Get them a banner. Good Lord. This is going to make me throw up.
I did not say the Cubs were going to be World Series champions. I was simply
You
pointing
just
out
said
an
that they were the
example.
Atlanta Braves from
I was
2021.
pointing out an example of a team that came back after a rather underwhelming first half of the season. The Cubs had a rather underwhelming first half of the season.
With the biggest grin, humanly possible,
Well,
indicating this is what's about to happen.
I mean, Dennis, if I didn't have faith, would
In
I
the body language.
would I be a sports fan if I didn't have faith that that would happen?
I don't know. Were you a sports fan a month and a half ago? Because you didn't have faith then.
Dennis,
No.
I've been watching every single miserable game. I've been watching every single miserable game since that point in time.
Correct. And I've been watching every single miserable game of the Cincinnati Reds in the last 2 weeks, and it's been tough. Let me tell you.
Dennis, if I knew that
It's been tough.
if I knew
But I haven't lost faith.
Jameson Taillon was gonna start going 7 innings, 2 earned run performances, then I would have kept the faith. But the man didn't record a single quality start through like 12 games. And Cody Bellinger was
Well,
hurt,
I mean,
and Seiya Suzuki was playing like trash, and we were still playing Tucker Barnhart every 3 days, and still playing Miles Mastrobuoni every 3 days. It was bleak. It was bleak.
correct. And so you're gonna sit here and tell me that things cannot change for the Cincinnati Reds. That's
No,
what
I
you're gonna
didn't
sit
say
here and
that.
tell me.
I didn't say that. When did I say that?
I mean, it was implied. It was
How,
implied.
Bob, how is that implied? All I asked was for Dennis's thoughts on his team now sitting in third place after not making any deadline moves.
After a massive free fall,
I mean, to be fair, the free fall was
out of
massive.
postseason contention.
The free fall was massive, and you are currently out of postseason contention. Did I? Are you going to
Okay,
Kevin Brown me, Dennis? Are you going to Kevin Brown me and suspend me from my own podcast for stating facts?
How is 2.5 games from the division and a half game behind the wild card out of postseason contention in the exact same spot as 2023 World Series
out of the
champion Chicago
postseason
Cubs are currently sitting?
standings. Out of the postseason standings.
You said contention.
I meant standings. I'm not writing off the Reds' entire season. I was saying at this moment they're not currently in the postseason. That was my intention.
I mean, okay, half a game, perfect, wonderful. They're currently out mathematically. That is a factual statement.
That was what I was going for.
As are the Chicago Cubs.
As are the Chicago Cubs. Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
I mean, here's what it comes down to. It's a long season. Anything can happen. Could the Chicago Cubs be the 2021 Atlanta Braves? Sure. Why not? Could the Cincinnati Reds continue to fall off the face of the earth and win 5 games the rest of the season? Sure, it's possible. But at the end of the day, would it be disappointing for me? Absolutely, it would, because they've provided some hope and some faith here in Cincinnati that this team is back on on the up again and for the first time in a long time, and it's been fun to watch. But at the same time, the players who have made that happen will be right back in the lineup next year for an entire season, and that's exciting. That's just exciting at the end of the day. We haven't had that around here in a very long time.
My apologies, Dennis. I did not mean to insult you. I just figured that losing 8 of your last 9 games may be considered a free fall out of first place. That was my
No, it is a free fall out of first place. It was just the insinuation that the season's over when we're in the exact same spot and anything can happen in the next 45 games. I mean, there's basically still a fourth of the season left. And could, if you follow the momentum train, sure. But if you go back and you look at the standings and look at the calendar before the Cincinnati Reds went on the stretch of good baseball that they went on, there was nothing special happening with this team, but there was nothing exceptional. I mean, we were 5 or 6 games out of first place. It didn't look great. It looked bleak. Things can turn around.
Agreed.
Things look bleak right now. I don't know if they will by September 30th.
Bob, you've held your tongue. I see you've been looking at a second screen.
I have been.
You must have some sort of facts and knowledge to drop on us, so we're ready to hear it.
Well, sure. I was just checking out why Dennis was, defending his honor and, you know, going on that lovely spiel, taking it to you, Derek. I had to uh, get in some research on, just who is the most likely, based on strength of remaining schedule, to make this wild card spot. Now, of course, all the teams in the Central are, of course, competing for the division title. But I had to see, assuming that neither the Cubs nor Cincinnati win the division, which I know is not the hope at this point for either of you, but is consuming that they don't. Who do they? What's their strength of schedule look like? So the Chicago Cubs, out of 30 MLB teams, based on strength of schedule at this point, they currently rank 28th. So that means that they have one of the easiest remaining schedules
Correct.
in the majors. There's only two teams lower than them, being one Detroit Tigers and one Chicago White Sox, and a lot of that is because they have to play each other. Uh, the Chicago Cubs, just to run through some of their opponents, they have 7 games remaining against the Pirates.
Tell me you're on the Tankathon website
I
currently.
am on the Tankathon. Seven
I
games
love the Tankathon website.
6 games remaining against the Rockies. And of course, 3 against Detroit, 3 against City, as we kind of alluded to. Cincinnati, not too bad. 22nd. They've got 6 games
I
against
would
the
say that
Pirates, 6 games
it's
against
not
St.
that
Louis,
bad.
3 games against the Mets, which once looked like it was going to be tough, but now is getting significantly easier, and 4 games against the Guardians. Um, so you're kind of competing right now with Miami, Miami and San Fran, and maybe Arizona as the 3 teams that are kind of looking right now in the mix. San Fran, fourth hardest schedule remaining. Miami,
That's
eighth
you love to
hardest
hear that.
schedule. Eighth
You
hardest
love to
schedule.
hear that.
And where is Arizona at? Let me tell you, 13th hardest. So all in the top half of the league right now for hardest remaining schedule. With the San Francisco Giants in particular, who are 2.5 games above the wild card spot right now, having to play 6 games against the Dodgers, 7 games against the Dodgers, 6 games against the Braves, and then a series against the Rays,
Oh,
Phillies,
that's so
and
clutch.
Rangers.
That's
Miami
so
has to
clutch.
do
I mean,
6 games against LA, 7 against your Brewers. So even if Miami, you know, stays in the mix, they can at least knock off the Brewers, which can help you. Um, and
that's
then
so clutch.
3 games against the Braves and the Stros as well. So right now, both the Cubs and the Reds are primed um, to either win their division or make the playoffs. Where's Milwaukee? Milwaukee is actually right in the middle. So at 15 exactly. So you're looking at a race that's really primed for you guys to take over. My only point I want to make kind of about the discussion that you guys were having is, from watching the Tigers especially, but also watching, the Cincinnati Reds and other teams around the MLB since I've started. One thing that I've learned is that when your team is having a successful season, you do not take that for granted. Because it's very easy for the next year to be much worse than the last. So because the Cincinnati Reds have such an easy remaining schedule, and the Cubs, I kind of expected that Cincinnati would make a little bit more moves than they did at the deadline. I understand they're ahead of schedule. They're playing with house money. My only thing with that is, can you guarantee that you have your horses healthy and can do it again? Um, Also, are you not going to be cheap arses and actually buy when the time comes and you need to buy? Because I know that Cincinnati um, has had trouble, paying the freight in the past, as I'm sure you can attest to, Dennis. So It's just a matter of, do those two things, come to fruition? I guess as a fan, you have to hope that they do, but you also have to hope that your manager doesn't seemingly tank your games for you as well, which is making this half game back of the wild card right now look very, very fishy, especially if you're a Reds fan.
Speaking of your
Yeah,
manager,
well, I mean,
Dennis.
here's
Oh, I was going to ask you, Dennis, your thoughts on David Bell's contract extension, so you can address that after you reply to Bob.
I'll try to do both because that just I hear where you're coming from, Bobby, and I do agree with most of what you're saying there, and I understand the like, okay, you're in this position. There's no guarantee that you're going to be in this position next year, no matter who's coming back and how good they supposedly are. However, I do think that this was an unfortunate year. It certainly seemed to me, and I'm not in the GM's office or any of that,
Sure,
you know,
sure.
stuff. It seemed to me as though obviously this team needed some help in the pitching department, particularly in starting pitching, and to get controllable starting pitching was just barely. It was not even possible at this trade deadline. It was seemed like a very very tough market, and I know that they reached out, they had conversations, they at least thought about making those moves, and at the end of the day, they felt like it was going to be it was just an overpay. It wasn't that it was just expensive. It was that it was overpaying for the value that they felt like they could get in return. And I maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But I also know that at the end of this season, we've got Joey Votto's contract coming off the books, Mike Moustakas, see you
Yep,
later.
yep,
And
Will Myers. Is Will
that's going to
Myers
open
finally
up
coming off the books?
Will Myers. Will Myers, the top three players pay in terms of current salary on the Cincinnati Reds,
yep.
only one of which is taking actual at bats with this team,
Sure. Are coming
will
off
be
the
off the
books.
books in the offseason. And if they don't spend money this offseason,
Yeah, I was
if they
gonna
don't
say,
spend
Dennis,
any money this
that's where I'm
offseason,
going with this.
and we turn around and we're having this podcast and this discussion in March and we haven't signed anybody of
Of note, it's got to be somebody of
value at all,
note.
then I will be pretty irate. That would be upsetting. I'm just not upset about the fact that they didn't overpay for one or two starting pitchers at this trade deadline. I'm just not.
Well, I'm thinking to myself, Dennis, and I completely understand where you're coming from, but I'm thinking to myself, who are teams that did make some acquisitions at this deadline? Let's just run through it. Miami, half game above you for the wild card, made 3 or 4 deals and upgraded their roster. Philadelphia, they're only a few games up on you guys for the wild card right now. Um, they added a pitcher who just threw a no hitter, and he was. I mean, it wasn't anything special. I mean, we got one
Correct.
prospect
No,
back.
I see where you're going with this, but like there's only so many teams that are going to make the playoffs. So sure,
Sure,
we could have added somebody, but so did the Phillies, so did the Marlins. There's still no guarantee we beat them out for the wild card.
true, but
So did the
I,
Cubs.
I guess
Fine.
my point is, like, what makes them think that they're in the same position as you guys, and they're kind of fitting along the mindset of, like I was describing, hey, we don't have this guaranteed. We're gonna add to our team, and I really don't feel like they gave up a whole lot. I mean, Miami is a notoriously cheap organization, and they still made some good deals, and so did Philly. I mean, they brought in Michael Lorenzen, who's looked good in his like one home start, but um, I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that Cincinnati couldn't put a package together for a reasonable pitcher that would have not dampen the future, given the number of successful young players that they've had this season.
Dennis,
Just in the fact that they could have actually still won their division, because compared to those other teams, they don't really have those other teams you're competing against don't really have much of a chance of winning their division.
Dennis, will the Reds be in on Shohei Ohtani this offseason? Do you need to throw every dollar
No,
you have at Shohei Ohtani? Come on, Dennis. Shohei Ohtani to the Reds.
that's just not even like in my brain. That doesn't even exist as a possibility.
Boo.
That's
But they're coming off the
I know.
books.
I mean,
They're coming off the books, Dennis.
I
yeah,
mean,
but the last time people came off the books, we signed Mike Moustakas and Nick Castellanos and Bobby, one of your favorite players of all time.
Eugenio Suarez.
No, well, no, we already had Eugenio Suarez. Crap. The guy who couldn't hit a home run.
Shogo Akiyama.
Shogo Akiyama, yes, Shogo Akiyama,
First
and
off,
that was our big splash. Those were our big splashes. So, like,
first off,
I mean, that's what we're working with. We're not working with Shohei.
let's not disrespect Nick Castellanos. Let's not disrespect Nick
No,
Castellanos. But
no, I love Nick
we'll
Castellanos.
gladly disrespect Shogo Akiyama. Dennis, I was just about to mention Shogo Akiyama. Maybe the
It's time to bring him
Reds
back.
should have never cut Shogo in anticipation of bringing over Shohei to have another Japanese brethren on the team to entice him to come.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
That's what I'm hoping the Cubs do with Seiya Suzuki. That
Wow.
Seiya can entice Shohei Ohtani and be like, yeah, Chicago's great. Yeah, we got something special, and you can speak to me in Japanese, and we'll have a bond there that can carry us through some of the tough times.
Wow.
Look, I know I never got to comment on your question about David Bell.
Oh yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
so I'll do that. I know that there's been some gripes, as you were mentioning before the show, on Red's Twitter concerning specifically
Lineup
the
management.
playing down a man, the playing down a man. That's all fine and well. I understand that. My gripe, as you guys know, has been for a long time, and I was banging the table back in May and June of this year that if you continue to run the bullpen into the ground, it will bite you in the butt. And if you go and look, and I don't know if it's still up there, but if you go and look as of earlier today on MLB.com and just the Cincinnati Reds page, what's the top article say? It says Reds excited for rest after bullpen taxed, something along those lines.
Has I mean,
I'm paraphrasing, but that is the headline. That is the headline on August 10th or August 9th, August 10th, and that's what I called in May, and that's one person's fault. It's David Bell's fault. You could say, okay, the starting pitching should have been better, even when they had good games. I mean, I'll go back and pull the records if I have to. Even when the starting pitchers were rolling 85, 90 pitches, you're done. I don't care if you've given up one run in 5 innings. You're out. You're done. And that's just simply I, one of the quickest hooks of a manager that I've seen in quite some time, and it's simply killing us. It's simply killing us, and I've seen it time and time again, and there's nothing you can do about it because the trade deadline's passed. You made one trade, and you've got who you got. Like that's and and they've already pitched the innings that they have. There's no reversing it. That's the thing that sucks the most is there's no reversing it.
Dennis,
And this is exactly why this team always crashes and burns in August and September every year. Even when they have
Wow.
good seasons, they do. Either they just suck or they get my hopes up and they crash in August and September.
Dennis, last question. And we can move on to some more general baseball talk because we did not get a chance to last week discuss the actual trade deadline acquisitions, some major acquisitions of some of the teams in the league. Is David Bell the man that can bring a World Series to Cincinnati?
Uh, okay, so you would think based on everything I just said, my immediate answer would be no. However, there are some things about David Bell that I like. I just don't know if there are things that bring you a World Series per se. The things that I like about David Bell are
His willingness
more
to get
so to deal
tossed.
with the correct. Thank you. Yeah, there you go. More. I was going to say more so to do with the intangibles, the things that don't make it onto the stat sheets, the things that don't make it into the statistical evaluation of players. It's the willingness to get tossed. I feel like he has a great clubhouse environment. I mean, I know I've been hearing some things recently about the Chicago White Sox organization, and in terms of the culture, Cincinnati seems, at least in the eyes of just a general fan, to be a great place to play baseball. And I give David Bell a lot of credit for that.
Is so.
However,
I was just gonna say, sounds like David Bell, major vibes guy. Are vibes going to
Vibes
be
guy through the roof.
are vibes enough
Vibes
to
are
get
good.
you to a World
Vibes.
Series,
It's like,
Dennis?
do vibes win you World Series? I mean, I don't want to transition this conversation too early, but is Dan Campbell the guy to bring Detroit a Super Bowl? The
Well,
vibes are through the roof.
I mean,
Is he going to make enough correct decisions? I mean, we don't have to go there yet. I'm just saying, for comparison's sake, that's kind of how I feel about David Bell.
I'll say this, Dennis. Joe Madden was probably more of a vibes guy than a tactical guy, and we managed to win a World Series with him. I like to say we won in spite of him after he nearly ran Aroldis through the crust of the earth into the Earth's core with how hard he rode Aroldis Chapman. So perhaps David Bell and
David Bell and Alexis Diaz.
his vibes are enough to pull you through.
I hope so. I hope so.
Only time will tell. Moving into sort of the rest of the MLB, just to do a quick trade deadline recap off the top of my head, just thinking of some of the major names that were moved. Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander both moved from the New York Mets after the Mets have had a rather underwhelming season. Max Scherzer to the Texas Rangers, Justin Verlander back to the Houston Astros. Um, both those teams obviously fighting for the AL West, fighting for the bye. Coming out of that division, the Rangers, I don't think, have lost since the trade deadline. Not to say that Max Scherzer obviously has not pitched every single game since the trade deadline, and I really don't think they made any major moves outside of that one, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Um, but getting Corey Seager back from injury certainly helped coming out of the All-Star break. Jonah Heim, I believe, might be back finally from his injuries. Rangers, very well-oiled machine. Any thoughts on Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander?
Go ahead, Dennis.
No, I mean, I think that this was, for some time, at least for people well acquainted with the situation in New York, becoming inevitable, and obviously disappointing from where their expectations were at the beginning of the season. Um, but at this point, not surprising. And man, yeah, the Rangers. I don't know if anybody saw this coming before the season started. I don't think I did. And I'm kind of happy for the shakeup in the AL West, though. That's kind of fun. You said they haven't lost since the trade deadline.
Correct.
I think they just lost their
That's
last game,
insane.
Derek.
Oh, did they lose today?
It says on
That's
MLB.com
crazy,
they're on a one-game loss streak, so
Oh, they lost yesterday.
man.
My apologies. They're 8-1 since the All-Star break. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I didn't
Anyway,
realize they
yeah, no,
lost to the A's
that's a team
yesterday.
right now. That's a team, and they were able to add to it on the deadline, so good for them.
yeah,
Bob, any thoughts?
I'm really excited for Justin Verlander. Um, you know, he kind of achieved everything he wanted to achieve with the Astros, which is why he was out of there. But um, duty calls and he's back in the mix. And I think the same kind of thing goes for Max Scherzer as well. Like, I don't think anybody has any doubt that these guys are just now going to start becoming their old selves again under these regimes. When the
Correct. Correct.
rubber needs to meet the road, these are the guys. I mean, even at their advanced stage, that you would rather have on your side than against you. Um, I just hope we get to see matched up against each other. That's kind of my hope at some point.
Other teams making move. The San Diego Padres bringing Rich Hill to what? His 14th team? 15th team?
Oh
Along
man,
with
gotta get there.
G-Man Choi from the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Padres, I believe, also acquired Scott Barlow, who is unfortunately a sufferer from acute stain syndrome. They got him from the Kansas City
Baby.
Royals. So the Padres trying to make some big moves to bolster just some of their weaker areas of their lineup. The Atlanta Braves acquired Brad Hand. Brad Hand, classic reliever. He's bounced around to a couple of different teams, finds himself now in Atlanta. The Cubs acquiring Jamer Candelario, which has been absolutely massive for them. I'm pretty sure he's hitting almost 500 since being acquired. And we also got Jose Cuas from the Kansas City Royals. and he, I believe, has thrown 3 or 4 scoreless innings now. Oh, the Rangers added Jordan Montgomery as well. So the Rangers pretty much just stacked their starting rotation because why not? Um, the Angels said, screw it, we're not going to trade Shohei, we're going to buy. And their form of buying was acquiring uh, freaking CJ Crone and some bumlord reliever, if I remember right. Oh no, and Randall Grichuk. So the LA Angels making big moves of CJ Crone and Randall Grichuk. Um, yeah, there's quite a few other smaller moves. Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly going to the Dodgers. The Mets sending David Robertson to Miami. The Angels acquiring Lucas Giolito. So yeah, lot of big moves, a lot of sellers. Oh, the Cincinnati Reds did make one move. Dennis, do you
For
remember?
Sam
some
Mole,
left-handed reliever or something.
the
Correct.
left-handed reliever from Oakland.
Sam Mole. Dennis, has Sam Mole pitched for you since you've acquired him?
He has pitched. I don't know what he's done. He has pitched though.
Let's find out.
I
Sam
mean,
Mole.
not a big name.
He's pitched very well. Um, except for in yesterday's game against the Marlins, he gave up a 2-run homer. But outside of that, he had 4 previous 1 1/3 scoreless innings, notching multiple strikeouts in 3 out of those 4. So, not
Well, there you go.
bad. I mean, you gotta have another arm to grind into dust, right, Dennis?
Correct. I
Yeah.
mean, David Bell just needed a new guy to put into the face of the earth, and unfortunately, Oakland was the place to go for it. Apparently.
And then obviously, big news of the week, newly acquired Michael Lorenzen from the Detroit Tigers going to the Phillies, his first home start. Throws a no-hitter. Tigers legend, all-star Michael Lorenzen. People were hating on Michael
And
Lorenzen,
Reds
saying,
legend.
and Reds legend, people were saying Michael Lorenzen didn't deserve to be an all-star, and then he went out and threw a no-hitter. And then probably one of the biggest news stories from the trade deadline. Bob, I'm going to swing it over to you for this one. Scott Harris refusing to get a deal done to ship out Eduardo Rodriguez. Negotiating with the Dodgers, had a deal in place to send Erod over, and all he had to do was waive his no trade clause, and he declined to do so. So, step one, roast Al Avila for giving Eduardo Rodriguez, of all people, a 10-team no trade clause. Absolutely psychotic, delusional behavior. And then second, Scott Harris not being able to deal him at the deadline, and if Eduardo Rodriguez opts out of his contract at the end of the season, the Tigers lose him for nothing.
Very well put, Derek. I am frustrated with Scott Harris that this was not there was not more advanced notice or concern about this potentially being an issue, given the fact that, if they would have found out probably even an hour earlier that the trade wasn't going to go through, they probably could have found a suitable alternative. If the idea was to get him off the books and try to find a little bit of return for him. Um, However, I will say, not that Erod did not have every right to do what he did. However, he's probably the first player I've ever heard of ever that didn't want to go from Detroit to the Dodgers. I feel like
Yeah.
he could have played much more meaningful baseball with the Dodgers and had a much better chance to, up his value playing deep postseason baseball. But, since he didn't want that, that makes me more inclined to believe that maybe he actually does want to stay in Detroit. However, if he doesn't, like you mentioned, Derek, and opts out, I'm going to be absolutely irate. And it's just a classic example of a team that, had finally had like a bright spot going for us, and now we just put out the spark because we just are incompetent.
Yeah, this is the type of move or lack of move that has a chance to make or break an entire tenure. If Erod ends up leaving for nothing, and the Tigers continue to remain in the depths of a very weak AL Central, this is a type of move that can get you fired in, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years maybe. So yeah, just it was a consensus nationwide blunder on the part of Scott Harris, and depending on the sort of logistics of the trade, how early they had been talking to Erod about potentially waiving his no trade clause, all those types of little details that I'm not sure we ever really got answers on. But if those little details were to signal ineptitude on the part of Scott Harris, could be disastrous for the Detroit Tigers moving forward. Dennis, any thoughts there?
No, I think
And
you
I'll be
guys
right back.
outlined it perfectly.
Um,
Yeah, no, I think you guys outlined it perfectly.
any other big MLB news before I swing it over to talk to you guys, or before I swing it over to you guys to talk about something while I leave for a second?
No, I think
I
that
don't think so.
covers MLB pretty well. Um,
You know what? Talk about the U.S. women's national team choking while I'm gone, and then I'll have some thoughts when I come back. Because Bob,
Oh
I'm
my
sure
gosh.
you have some thoughts, so I'll be back momentarily.
I got a few thoughts on this. Um, you know, the U.S. women's national team. I think everybody that's at least somewhat interested in soccer has kind of been following the whole drama with the women's national team over the past few years. They made a lot of headlines for not necessarily things that were, on the field related. Um, for right or for wrong, that's not, that's beside the point. Um, Now here they are, expected, they've had obviously very successful runs in recent memory. Um, and here they are squeaking by, barely making it into the round of 16, I believe it was. And to lose on penalties um, was just very, very disappointing. I mean, you bring in, um, what is her name? Megan Rapinoe at the end there to take the penalty kick. Um, I believe they brought her off the bench specifically to do that. And then in the moment that matters most, she skies it over the bar to end the run of the United States. It's just kind of a crazy moment. Obviously, Twitter had a lot to say about that. Um, but it was just a real letdown. And there was a lot of pundits, a lot of media, Dennis, that were kind of going back and forth about this, saying, had looked like they'd been underperforming kind of up to this game. And there didn't really seem to be any sense of urgency within the team. Everybody kind of just looked happy to be there, hunky dory. Obviously, we're not in that locker room. We don't know, but that's kind of
Yeah.
what the reports were. So this could be a classic situation, Dennis, of resting on laurels. Obviously, this team has had a lot of recent success, um, and of course, we'll never really know. But just obviously a massive disappointment to not at least advance to um, the quarterfinals. Um, I would think that was kind of at least where I bare minimally expected them to go.
Yeah, I don't have too many thoughts. I admittedly have not followed too much. I mean, you know, if you're a sports fan at all, you've seen some of the headlines,
Yeah, sure. You know what
but
I'm referring to.
yeah, exactly. And I think that, between the two of us, you would be the man to speak mostly on it. It is a bit disappointing, but it also, this team is one that has built a high expectation for themselves
Sure.
over the years of success that they've had. And so the bar has been set pretty high to say, a loss in the round of 16 on penalty kicks is a disappointment, which it is. And I understand why people feel that way and why it is one. But, at the same time, there has been a pretty high bar set. So I understand all the other things that have gone on in terms of maybe there wasn't much of a sense of urgency, and maybe things were kind of just, you know, maybe there's an argument to be made that they were just kind of falling into a pattern of being used to success, and that was sort of part of the downfall there. But
You
It's
Not to
disappointing for sure.
go ahead. Yeah, not to cut you off here, Dennis, but I mean, I think where some of the frustration came in is that this team, out of all of the hype that they had coming in, um, and all the recent success, recent headlines, all the talk that had been going on, they won one game in their entire time in this event. Um, in the group stages, in their group that they were in, they won one game against the lowest rated team in their group. They beat Vietnam, which every single team in the group beat Vietnam. And then they drew their other two games, and that was barely good enough to get them in by like a half game, basically, into the
Sure.
the into the round of 16 final teams. And in the first game of the round of 16, they go up against Sweden, who had won all three of their games in the group. I'm not to say that Sweden, hadn't been hot. But obviously, as any United States sports fan, you're thinking to yourself, okay, we've seen recent success, and we're the United States. This is Sweden. We need to get that out there and outclass them, and that just absolutely did not happen. Um, and then for that final poetic moment of you bringing in probably the most notable player on the team, Megan Rapinoe, um, and then her skying it over the bar on penalties to seal the loss was just, you know, it was a memorable game, but it was but not for good reasons, unfortunately, Dennis.
Well said. Derek, I see that you're back. Do you have any thoughts? I think we're wrapping up this discussion, so feel free to add your 2 cents.
Sure. I haven't heard anything that was said. So I guess I'll ask you guys this, and if you've already
Sure,
addressed it, feel free to repeat it.
sure.
The women's team was very polarizing this World Cup. Literally from pre-game of match one, with a certain segment of people getting very upset due to their perceived lack of patriotism during the national anthem of the first match. So, there's been a lot of stuff since then, a lot of stuff before that with um, the women's team fighting for pay that was more in line with what the men's team was making. I remember that from the World Cup aftermath from 4 years ago. And so I didn't know whether you guys had any thoughts about sort of being like either happy that they lost, because I saw a lot of that on Twitter, like they needed to be humbled, this, I'm glad they lost that. Or if your primary emotion was more, that sucks because the U.S. women's national team has always been extremely competitive, won the last two World Cups and was looking for a three-peat, and just the general disappointment of not seeing them even make it out of the first round of the knockout stage. So I didn't know whether you guys discussed that already.
Yeah, to give you kind of a brief recap, my position, Derek, I had kind of said that a similar thing to you that basically, for all the reasons you mentioned above, this team was already kind of making headlines for not necessarily things that were on the pitch related things um, coming in, and obviously there was many reports during the actual tournament that there was, the team maybe not was not as locked in or as focused or as like emotional about being defeated or
Carly Lloyd
not
and
having
Alexi
yeah.
Lalas had a lot to say after the tie to the
I mean, yes,
Netherlands.
they tied the Netherlands, and
Yes.
I was kind of and I mentioned that I think for if to answer your question directly, Derek, I was definitely more on the side of disappointment, um, that they didn't perform better. Uh, but I will say it was the focus for me was on this team after all of the stuff that had gone on prior to this. They came in and they won one game in the entire event. They beat the lowest seeded team in their group, Vietnam, who lost every game, and then proceeded to go in to play Sweden, who had been hot. Like I said, they'd won all their games in their group, but you're thinking to yourself, okay, this is the United States. We've been hot in this event. We're gonna come and outclass Sweden, and then to have sub on Megan Rapinoe, I believe it was, Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, in the penalty kick segment, and then have her soar one over the bar, just seemed, for many people I was reading on Twitter, to
Poetic.
be a very, very poetic ending
Poetic.
to, as I was telling Dennis, as I believe I put it, it was a very, very memorable game. Maybe not for the right reasons, but definitely one that will stick with you.
I'll say this. I certainly was not rooting against the women's national teams by
No.
any means. Um, I certainly wasn't not happy that they lost. It didn't bother me
Okay.
that
Sure.
much.
Sure.
Because here's where I'm coming from. From a
Sure.
pure, and I'm going to be proper here, a pure football aspect, from game one, when I watched that game, I was like, wow, that was like kind of underwhelming for what I expected them to come out and play like. Because I'm pretty sure they lost like 7-0 to Sweden, if I remember right. Vietnam did. They got absolutely waxed by one of the other two teams in the group. I
Sure.
didn't get a chance to watch their match against who
They
was
got waxed by the Netherlands, Derek.
they got waxed by the Netherlands. Okay, who was the second game of the US's group?
Portugal, maybe?
Yes. I think so. Was it Netherlands then Portugal or Portugal then Netherlands?
Let me get that for you. So they played Vietnam, then 5 days later they played the Netherlands, then the Portugal.
Okay, so I missed the Netherlands game, and ended up seeing that they had drawn that, and then I watched the entirety of the Portugal game. And you would think that in a game that determines your fate as to
Yep.
whether or not you move into the knockout
I know
stage
where you're going with this.
and either have to play Sweden in the first round or get a much more favorable matchup, that they would have been a lot more sharp and clean than they were from a football aspect. Post game celebration and happiness and laughing and cheering, be darned, I didn't care much for that. From a pure football aspect, they just weren't very sharp. And I don't know if that has to do with the coaching. I don't know if that has to do with the injuries in the I'm going to call it the World Cup off season, but the regular season for players like Mallory Swanson and Christian Press, um, losing two pretty key players um, outside of the World Cup training season. I don't know if that had a ton to do with it, but they didn't particularly move the ball side to side very much. They didn't really attack downhill very much. And they didn't really get a ton of good looks outside of some rather fortunate balls inside the box off of corner kicks. Outside of that, from an entirely fundamental football aspect, I didn't even really think they played that well. There were a lot of people saying they deserved to lose to Portugal in that game that they drew. And you can make the argument when they had that absolutely massive, just completely elementary mistake on the back end to let the Portugal forward get free and be saved by the left post. Bob, the left post saving the U.S. women's team season in like the 88th minute. It was pretty obvious that this team was not as sharp as they had been in years past. And I'm not going to bother speculating, attributing that to off field, you know,
Sure.
all that
Mumbo
stuff.
jumbo. Yeah.
And I'll admit that I'm not the biggest fan of Megan Rapinoe to begin with, but she provided absolutely nothing of value whenever she was subbed on in any of the other three games. Absolutely nothing of value. Maybe that's some of my bias, preconceived notions of her, that I don't particularly care for her as a player. Um, but I didn't think she really provided anything of value. And then to use her in the penalty kicks with the game on the line, a chance to send you through, and she skies one into the stands? Like I said, for some people that was poetic. For me, all I could do was shake my head and wonder how you come to make that coaching decision in the first place. Because in the prior three games, when I say she provided no value, I literally mean she provided no value on the offensive end. Not from anything I had seen anyway. Um, so yeah, obviously a disappointment. Um, Some people on Twitter will say maybe this should have spent more time practicing and less time advertising. I have nothing to say on that particularly. I thought Sophia Smith was pretty good for as young as she is. She's pretty talented and has got a bright future ahead. I thought Julie Ertz was an absolute beast holding down the back end. She seemed like she was out there playing with everything that she had, and she was extremely talented. And then, can you guys hear that? That thunder and lightning out there, or no? No, it's not
No,
coming
no,
through.
no, no, no.
It's storming outside quite heavily. And then, what's her first name? Horan. I don't remember what her first name is.
Oh yeah.
But she was. I'm pretty sure she's a midfielder. She was a captain. She played.
Lindsay.
Yes, Lindsay Horan. I thought she played pretty well throughout the tournament. Obviously, not having Rose Lavelle after one of the most bogus second yellow cards I've ever seen in my life hurt USA to not have her for Sweden. Uh, but I've been rather long-winded, and I'll wind it down in a few simple sentences. Long story short, the U.S. women's national team simply was not sharp enough, not clean enough, not fundamental enough, and just flat out not good enough this year to win it all. Really, when it all boils down to.
Derek, Derek, tell me you're not getting hit by another microburst.
I don't think we're getting hit.
Hopefully,
I,
we
I
have another microburst situation.
I mean, if the power goes out and all of a sudden you lose me from the Zoom, uh, we may have experienced another microburst. This just appears to be isolated thunderstorms, so we should be fine.
All
Just
right,
one of
there we go.
those.
There we go. Just
Just appears to be
clarifying.
one of those late night pop up storms. But yes, hopefully no more microbursts, Dennis.
All right. That sounds good.
But yeah, um, yeah, that probably wraps it up for me on the women's national team. Very disappointing. Um, and yeah, seemed like they could have used a little more veteran leadership out there jeez, from people who have been there before. I don't know what else to cover. There hasn't been a ton of NBA news. The NFL is the last thing, really, Bob. You had a quick look. What do you got?
A quick look at what?
Oh, you
On
sat
my
up.
face?
Yeah, you sat up like you had
Yeah.
something to say about the NBA, so I didn't. I
Well, uh funny you mentioned the look because I actually was just looking through some potential garbage time takes your monies for
mm,
whenever we're ready for that, and I found just the perfect one
okay, okay.
for tomorrow. It did bring a smile to my face, I must say. So,
Bob, have you been tracking
pardon me.
much of the is the FIBA World Cup going on right now?
I have not
Cuz
been tracking it. It's been going on.
I know a lot of I've been seeing a lot of stuff about like the US national team. uh
It's starting up on the 25th, Derek, of this month.
okay. Cuz I saw a clip on Twitter.
A lot of practice stuff going on.
Yeah, I don't know if Germany and Canada were playing an exhibition, but I saw Dennis Schroeder make Dylan Brooks look like a fool. I didn't know if you guys had seen that. And I didn't know how much you had actually been following the U.S.
Ooh.
team's progress.
Looks like they've got some of the World Cup draws if you want to talk about that, but
We can save it for closer to
sure.
the event, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, I just seen like I don't know if AJ Hogard was at the U.S. development camp, but I saw he was playing really well defensively in a couple of clips I saw online. I thought I saw that Cade Cunningham was
It has looked
MVP
very good. Yeah.
for a couple of days of the workouts and stuff, and that he's been playing really well. I saw a sort of joking clip of Jalen Duran dunking on, I believe it was Austin Reeves. Can't say I remember for sure. But from what I remember, the Detroit Pistons have had a strong showing at some of
Yes.
these Team USA FIBA preparations, so that's good to hear.
Correct. Correct.
Other than that, boys, your favorite three words of the entire year: football is back. Football is back. We had the Hall of Fame game last week. We had the premiere of Hard Knocks this week. I did not watch because I don't particularly care for the Jets. And I know that since you guys didn't watch the Lions Hard Knocks last year, there's zero chance you watch the Jets Hard Knocks this year. But football is officially back. The Vikings and Seahawks had a preseason game tonight. The Patriots and Texans had a preseason game tonight. Dennis, when's the Bengals' first preseason game, and how have they been looking in training camp?
Tomorrow night, baby.
Have we had joint practices, Dennis? Have we had joint practices, and who's coming out on top?
That's right. Tomorrow night at Paycor Stadium, we got the Green Bay Packers in town currently for some joint practices. I'll admit I don't know exactly how those have been going, but reports from camp itself have been positive. I mean, if you take out the Joe Burrow injury situation, everything's been positive. Um, I haven't heard any negative news out of camp um,
I heard Zach Taylor
regarding
say.
anybody else, and so
I heard Zach Taylor had an update and said
like,
that Joe Burrow is what? He said something along the lines of several weeks ago I said he would be out several weeks or something like that. I don't know if you saw that quote.
what? Yeah, I did not see that. All I know, I will tell you that I saw the other big piece of quote unquote news, if you can even call it that, is that Jamar said that he doesn't want Burrow to play.
I did see that. To
Not
what, like
that.
week 5 or something?
Well, yeah, he wants him to be right, like and which is fair. It's not that he doesn't want Burrow to play. He doesn't want him to come back too soon or be rushed back or any of that sense and end up in the same situation. So, yeah, I mean, it's really been kind of quiet, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. We'll see. But yeah, tomorrow night at 7, they finally take the field and it'll be against Green Bay.
Here's the quote. The timeline is
Okay.
several weeks from when I said several weeks. Thank you, Zach Taylor. Very cool.
Zach Taylor's starting to get ticked off with the media. You can hear that. That is an old coach. That is an old coach response right there, and not something I've heard Zach Taylor say too much of. So that's that's really interesting just from that side of things.
I mean, I mean,
He's getting fed up.
I mean, Bob, it needs to be said that we can't have injury prone Joe Burrow popping his Achilles like Kevin Durant did after his calf issues a couple years ago against the Toronto Raptors in the NBA Finals. So, I mean, can't have. I mean,
Then his toe was on the line, Derek. I mean, who knows? Maybe if his knee would have been right, that wouldn't have happened. Um, Derek, just you know me, just always looking at stuff live as we're talking for interesting points. Derek, I got a prop bet for you. With the season coming up, I wanna ask you about, because I thought it was interesting for the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions to score a rushing touchdown every game, plus 6,000. Derek, your thoughts?
It's a fun bet. That's a fun bet.
Because I feel like the Lions have such a good line. They've had obviously the Jamal Williams phenomenon last year. Just a little bit of a
how
interesting
so a
bet.
six plus 6,000. That
Plus six
means
thousand.
if you bet $1, you get $60.
Correct.
$60.
I mean, you might as well. You might as well throw $1 on it. I mean, it can't hurt if we think the Lions offense is if the Lions offense is as good as we think they are. I mean, why not? Why not sprinkle a little something on there? Why not?
It was just a crazy thing that I couldn't even believe that you could bet on. But I was like, is that really that bad?
No,
Kind of thing.
that's pretty wacky. But Bob, any
Yeah, I love to
thoughts
see those fun prop bets.
on the Bengals trying to make sure that Joe Burrow doesn't blow out his Achilles?
Well, it's probably already blown. Um,
Is it just a
but
matter of time?
it's just a matter of time, I think, for Joe Shiesty. I think they better ink that deal immediately. Um, I'm just looking at all the lines and stuff, and of course, who do you guys have week 1, Dennis?
It's the Cleveland Browns.
I mean, Dennis, yeah, at least that sounds like a game that you guys can get through without maybe Mr. Shiesty present. But I'm hoping for your sake he's back sooner rather than later, so that if there happens to be any of the R word this season, there's no excuses.
Yeah, let's
Because
see here.
I haven't officially made my prediction on what I want to say about that, Dennis. So we'll have to wait maybe for the week before for my official thoughts. But
I'll say this. I've got a reminder for Saturday, August 26th. Four hot takes. Four hot takes that we can either
The
cover.
year already?
It's almost been. Yes, Dennis. We're already through the first week of August. To remind everyone what those hot takes are before we cover them more in depth in a couple of weeks. Dennis declared on December 1st of 2022 that the UC Bearcats will be middle of the road and bowl eligible.
Okay, I stand by that. I just went through their schedule. Just went through their schedule the other day. 7-5, 7-5 incoming from the UC Bearcats, bowl eligible.
We'll have to have NFL and college football previews coming up in the very near future.
All right.
Very very
What did
soon.
I say
Very
that
soon.
shouldn't have been said?
Yep, I've got three more. One is I said that Colorado will be bowl eligible.
Yeah, no chance.
Me and Bobby on December 16th, 2022 said Luke Fickle and Wisconsin are going to give Michigan and Michigan State free wins.
I, you know, I'm not
That's
totally
probably
confident
fair
in that
too.
take, but I'm not totally confident in that take. But I do love that I was
You love
associated
the
with that
spirit.
take.
Yes, you love the
I,
spirit. And then
I love that my name was in the mix with that. Unfortunately, the Michigan State Spartans don't play the Wisconsin Badgers this season. So,
Oh no.
but I'm glad that my name was noted.
unfortunate. And then last hot take that I have, Derek said on January 6th, and then I wrote in parentheses, never forget, that the Lions will be 11-6 easily and maybe 13-4. And that was prior to all of the draft and free agency moves they made. And you know what I've seen be predicted as the Lions record? Lot of 10
13-4,
lot of 10 and 7. Lot of 10 and 7, lot of
10 and
11 and
7.
6.
What about
A,
13-4?
had not a lot of 13-4, but a lot of first in the NFC North, Bob. A lot of that.
I mean, it's time to update the banners at Ford Field. They're getting a little old, Derek.
They are getting a little bit old. It's still zero NFC North champions banners. Yikes. Last thing, and we can get into our closing segments here as we reach the 1 hour mark. Joey Votto tweeted out earlier today. Dennis, I don't know if you saw this. Bob, I don't know if you saw this.
I
Uh-oh.
did not see any of this. This could be dangerous. Go ahead.
You get an entire year of major league plate appearances,
Oh, yes, I
approximately
saw this.
650. How many hits, walks, and hit by pitches do you get?
What what?
Joey
Run that
Votto,
again.
Joey Votto asked, you get an entire year of major league plate appearances, approximately 650. How many hits do you get? How many walks do you get? And how many hit by pitches do you get?
Oh, he's just asking everybody to answer it for themselves.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
I see. I see. Okay. I didn't understand what his point was. Wow.
I'm gonna
Ooh.
chime in. I'm gonna chime in here.
I say I'm thinking. I'm thinking.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna get one knock.
A bunt single.
I'm gonna get a knock. I'm gonna walk 10 times,
Okay.
and I'm gonna get beamed 7 times.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
I
All
think
right.
I think that is
I
a fairly reasonable take. Cuz you've got to get lucky with a bunt single at least once. If not an
Just a
actual
slapper,
if
just a
not an
slap,
actual
it's
just swing and
throwing
hope
the
for the
bat out
best.
there.
Correct. Dennis, your
I
thoughts?
think man, I mean, it's a thought-provoking question. I'm curious to see what you said what you say here, Derek, former high school baseball standout.
37th round
I
pick, Derek Rossio.
I wish.
correct. I think I would say I'm going to give myself a little bit more in terms of production, but not much. I think I'm maybe going to get. I think I could squeak out about 5 knocks over the course of 650 at bats. That's a lot of at bats. And I mean, I did play baseball up until high school. I have some experience. Um, and then I think I'm gonna get walked maybe 20 times. And I'll go 5 hits, 20 walks, and like 5 hit by pitches.
Okay. Okay. You know
I
it's
mean,
tough?
sometimes you just get walked based off the fact that pitchers can't
Locate. Failure to
don't have control,
locate.
like whether or not they're trying to throw you off or throw you out or strike you out or not. Sorry, like they just can't.
What works to my advantage is only being 5'9",
Yeah,
That's true.
makes you sound
The height
small.
is an advantage there.
and
The walking rate has to be high here.
I see Jose Altuve drawing a lot of walks. That being said, I'll give myself, I don't know, 13 walks maybe. I greatly respect the MLB pitcher, so I'll give myself 13 walks, 6 or 7 hits maybe. I like to think that if I sit fastball down the middle enough times and swing as if I'm hitting a fastball down the middle enough times, that I could get I could make solid contact. Because I wasn't a scrub by any means. And then hit by pitches, I was hit a lot in high school, most on the team, in fact, because I stand about as close to the plate as Anthony Rizzo does. Um, so I could see myself getting hit by a pitch quite a bit. 13 times maybe, 12 times maybe.
There you go.
But then again, at the same time, after like the first or second hit by pitch, I might decide I don't like getting hit by pitches and not stand so close to the plate. So tough to say for sure. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm delusional in thinking I can get as many hits as I said. Um, but at some point, I mean, MLB pitchers are human.
I think you're fair where you're at.
I think
MLB
it's fair. I think it's a good assessment.
Yeah. So yeah, I just thought that was a nice little thought experiment. Um, because you always see like people say if you were given a chance to play an entire NBA game, could you make a three or something like that? And I don't think people realize that any regular Joe Schmo wouldn't even be able to hold the ball for 2 seconds, let alone get an actual shot off, unless they were cherry picking in the corner while the rest of the team was playing 4-on-5 defensively. That's literally the only way I can see a regular average Joe get a shot off in an NBA game. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
No, I think that's fair.
No, you're right.
Alrighty then. With that, we can get into right bench ballers, winners and losers of the week. Where do we want to start? I'm good with either.
I got my
Dennis.
red bench baller ready.
All right, Bob. You've got your right bench baller. Have at it.
Alrighty. I might be if you're an MLB fan, you might know this one, but I'm gonna go with none other than Davis Schneider, second baseman for the Blue Jays. He's got 19 career at bats so far with 2 dongs, 9 hits, batting 474 with 5 ribbies. That's a 565 on base percentage so far. Kind of busted onto the scene with some of the injuries that been having going on, and getting a little bit of an opportunity. And boy, has he been hot in the fantasy baseball circles, folks. Um, been very productive so far. He literally just got called up. He's a 24-year-old guy, not particularly the youngest person, 28th round draft pick, so a true right bench baller that's really making his name known.
Dennis, over to you.
Yeah, no, that was one that had to be done. So I'm glad that Bobby was able to bring him out. I think he's cooled off, sadly, just a little bit in the last game or two, but hot start for Schneider. And my right bench baller for the week is Ryan Jeffers, a catcher from Minnesota. 7 hits, 4 home runs, and 9 ribbies over the last week, which is just getting it done. Whenever you are able to put together four long balls in a week, that's a pretty productive week, and has been playing a lot more and seeing a lot more of the field for Minnesota.
My right bench baller, Pittsburgh Pirates starting pitcher Johan Oviedo. He sort of burst out early this season with a couple of nice starts. Fell off for quite some time as the MLB adjusted to him, and now he's made some adjustments back. Over his last 2 starts last week, 14 innings, .64 ERA, with only 8 hits, 5 walks given up, and 11 Ks. So nearly a K per inning over 14 innings. Just getting it done for the rookie starting pitcher. Winners and losers, there's lots of them. We've been gone for 2 weeks. Bob, back to you for your winner.
Alrighty. My winner this week is going to be none other than Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports. I don't know if any of you guys have saw the news that's going on there,
I did.
but
Then catch this one.
Dave is back
The pirate ship is
as
back.
full owner of Barstool Sports again. They formerly, if nobody knows the story, they were formerly partnered with a company called Penn Entertainment, and they had the Barstool Sports book and kind of a partnership where Penn kind of then owned Barstool. But Penn, looking for brighter pastures, struck a deal with ESPN to kind of sponsor their gambling relationship, and they basically gave the company back to Dave um, for really not any money up front. They will just get 50% of any sale of the company down the line, and they are not allowed to create their own sports book to compete against Penn. But essentially, he just kind of got it back because they needed to cut ties with Barstool in order to create that deal with ESPN. So now, kind of all the stoolies out there are excited. I know I follow quite a bit of people that work for Barstool and especially their baseball content. I really enjoy watching that. So um, just happy to see that the company's back in the hands of the man that kind of built it up.
Yeah,
Bobby,
sold
who's
it
the
for.
Tigers guy who
Chris Castellani.
and Chris,
Chris
yeah, he's
Castellano.
amazing, incredible, a great
Correct.
follow.
Correct.
Yeah, he was sold. He had a partner originally, and he sold
Mm.
his. He sold some major percentage of the shares to his partner, and then made what 500 million when
Yep.
they sold it to Penn back in 2020.
They got a bunch of stocks as well, which he still has.
Yep, and then they basically sold it to him for free, um, essentially. So big W's for Dave Portnoy. That man is living large. Dennis, over to you for your winner.
Yeah, my winner of the week is very generic, and we already said it. But football fans, man, we're back. We're prime fantasy football draft season. Got mock drafts going on, preseason games kicking off, and it's right around the corner. A couple weeks to the college football season kicking off, and then just one more until the NFL does. So yeah, it's that time of year, and the fall is upon us, and I'm excited for it.
My winner of the week, I was going back and forth between a couple people, and then some news broke. Can't remember if it was earlier today or late yesterday. Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless, winner of the week. Undisputed is back. Skip
Oh,
Bayless
it's
is
back.
bringing on Richard Sherman as co host with
Unbelievable.
Rachel Nichols as moderator. I don't know if the reports are true, Bob, but I thought I saw there's supposed to be guest appearances from Lil Wayne, but maybe I was
There
just
is
getting
every
trolled.
Friday. Every Friday, Derek.
Every Friday, we're getting Lil Wayne on
And a
Undisputed.
new theme song by Lil Wayne as well.
Massive. Massive.
Unbelievable. Okay, I gotta watch this. This sounds
Because
awesome.
I mean, really, Derek, I'm sorry to cut in on your winner, but you know how big of a fan I am of Undisputed, and morning sports talk debate shows. And I gotta say, when Shannon left, I was disappointed, but I knew that whatever Skip came up with next would be good, and I'd still watch. But him, and especially with his history with Richard Sherman, of course, if anybody watched for Steak back in the day, they'll know the clip that I'm talking about. If you don't, look up Skip Bayless, Richard Sherman, you'll find the debate that they had way back in the day.
Awesome. Awesome.
Um, but it truly personifies kind of the image that Skip always likes to portray, that it doesn't care if he doesn't care if any of these people personally hate him or don't like him or whatever. He is more than willing to debate anybody. And after the one interaction really that I know of that he had with Richard Sherman, he's now going to be his partner, full time, and they're going to go at it every single day. This is going to be absolutely awesome.
Absolute cinema, as Martin Scorsese would say. Absolute cinema. Yeah, I'm excited. And Rachel Nichols back on top.
A catch. A
Back
catch.
on top. Your winner or your loser of the week, Bob.
I'm going to go with athletes that like to place bets as my loser of the week. Because number one, we've got the story leaking about Phil Mickelson gambling up the wazoo, $1 billion worth of bets going down, and potentially gambling on the Ryder Cup with that coming up around the corner. Phil already put out a post on X about it um, earlier, saying that he never bet on the Ryder Cup
While
and
he was
all that, and
playing in it.
while he was playing in it, and he's
An
been
important
seeking
distinction.
therapy. He's been seeking therapy and all of that. Um, but also in addition to the whole Phil Mickelson situation, there was more people that are getting charged in the sports betting investigation going on in Iowa and Iowa State as
Iowa
well.
State, yes, yes,
So
yes, yes.
apparently in the state of Iowa they love to
There's
hammer
nothing
the
better to do.
unders. They love to hammer the unders is all I got to say there. So
I mean, one more point to your Phil Mickelson thing, Bob. The clip came out earlier this week from Bryson DeChambeau's YouTube video with Phil,
sure.
where Bryson explains, what they're playing, and Phil says, "So what are we playing for?" And Bryson's like, "I don't know. I haven't really thought about that." And Phil goes, "What do you mean you haven't thought about that?" Because Phil Mickelson, the true
Degenerate.
degenerate gambler that he is, always making
Has something on the
sure
line.
that there's money on the line. And then Phil just spouts off for, I don't know, 30, 45 seconds. All right, we'll play this way for this much, but if this happens, you only get to play for half. But if you win by this much, you'll get double. And Bryson's just like, "Yep, sounds good. Yep, sounds good." Probably having no idea what the heck Phil is saying because Phil is an
What he's
experienced
just agreed
hustler.
to.
Exactly, exactly. And that was an all-time clip. An all-time clip. Dennis, you're a loser of the week.
Man, I haven't seen that. I got to go back and I have to check that out because that sounds pretty awesome. Yeah, my loser of the week. I hope this one makes sense. Bill Walton. He's lost the Conference of Champions. He's lost it. It's gone. I'm sorry, Bill. Yeah, the 10 teams from the Conference of Champions cannot make the tourney every year now. At least not while doing so representing the Pac-12. I'm sorry, Oregon State will not be in the tourney, and
That was a
it's just
classic.
it's just tough day for Bill. Yep. I
Yeah.
don't I don't know what he's gonna do next. I don't know where he's going. I'm sure he's just still with ESPN, and they'll assign him somewhere else. But my first thought when the Conference of Champions has broke apart was poor Bill Walton.
That was one of mine as well. Um, I mean, obviously, Bill Walton will still have one more year to call Pac-12 games on
Sure, he
ESPN,
will.
I believe.
He will.
So it's going to be very interesting, the season-long eulogy Bill Walton writes for the Conference of Champions, what kind of shots he
Gosh, I can't.
takes, what kind of schools he
Unbelievable.
goes after. It's gonna be incredible to see Bill Walton's already deranged lunacy just go to the absolute depths of the abyss.
Here's the thing, Derek. My disdain for Bill Walton. However, I think there will be a part of me that will miss
Oh
the
yeah,
ten
there's gotta be.
p.m. Pac-12 basketball ESPN game.
I mean,
And what are you watching for if you're not watching for Bill Walton?
correct. I mean,
A little bit.
Pack After Dark. There's just nothing like
It's
it.
just
There's nothing
You
like
know,
it.
the only
that's
thing
right.
I remember the thing that I cherish about Bill Walton is that, my mother tends to stay up very late at night sometimes, just with the TV on, and she, one night out of the blue just randomly messages me, "Have you heard of this announcer that's calling this, Pac-12 game that's on ESPN right now? He's just popping off. He's like, I can't stand him at all." And I'm like, "Oh yes, I know exactly who you're mentioning." And my mom is never one to comment on the commentary unless it's Dan Dockich, by the way. Um, but the Bill Walton always got a rise out of her. So shout out Bill.
It's it's infuriating. It's truly, truly infuriating.
I mean, my brother also hates Bill Walton, thinks he's an absolute goonball. But when you live
He
the
is.
Pac-12 like I do, the only emotion you have for Bill Walton is love. Crazy grandpa, crazy uncle, twice removed, whatever you want to call him. When you're part of the Pac-12 culture, you love Bill Walton, and I have come to love Bill Walton. But I'll say this: 2 weeks ago, I was pounding the table, if I remember correctly, in the wake of Colorado's departure for the Big 12, begging University of Arizona President Robbins, the AD, the Board of Regents, to let Arizona go to the Big 12. And we missed last Thursday. I sent out a message late Friday night and said, guys, is anyone up to pod? Unfortunately, we were not. I almost uploaded an emergency video on my own anyway, just to talk about the demise of the Pac 12, because we really haven't covered it at all. But just to, since we're late to the party, summarize it: Utah, Arizona, ASU to the Big 12, Oregon, Washington to the Big 10, and Colorado had previously already gone to the Big 12 as well, leaving, unfortunately, Stanford, Cal, Washington State, and Oregon State as the lone members of the Pac-4. This all started, in my personal opinion, with the creation of the Longhorn Network by Texas back in, I believe, 2011. They were pretty much tired of revenue sharing with all the other schools in the Big 12, saying, we bring all this money to the table and we're having to share it with a bunch of scrubs. So they created their own dang TV network so they didn't have to share TV revenue with anyone. Um, and so with that came, a small shift in conference realignment. That was around the time when you had Rutgers join the Big Ten, you had Colorado join the Pac-12, you had Maryland join the Big Ten, Nebraska joined the Big Ten. The Big 12 had a little bit of a shakeup, and the Pac-12 commissioners at the time, Larry Scott, uh, had what he believed to be the most stable TV deal in America. And then the time came again when Texas and Oklahoma announced they were leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. And there was a lot of talk that the Pac 12 could go ahead and just raid the Big 12 for everything they had left.
Sure.
And Commissioner at the time said, nope, we don't need them. And now, for the four corners of the Pac 12 have bolted for the Big 12, and the Pac 12 is essentially dead unless they can convince, teams from the Mountain West, teams from the WAC. I don't even know where else they can look to revive the conference. Basically, could look at Stanford going independent because they make so much money just being an academic institution to begin with. They could go the Notre Dame route and be independent. Who knows? Who knows? People are saying Stanford and Cal might go to the ACC to create the CC, the Coastal Conference. Who knows? But unfortunately, it is sad that the Pac-12, that we've all known and loved for 100 years, is pretty much toast unless they can find a way to revive themselves off of life support. So very unfortunate, but college football will go on. But you sort of feel for the athletes in the non-revenue sports that have to take an exam on Tuesday and then fly across the country to New Brunswick, New Jersey on a
Yeah,
Friday. And
was it the are you basing that off of the Missouri coach? I can't remember his name. Did you see those comments?
I did see the Missouri coach's comments. I don't care much for his comments. I was more referring to some of the softball players from the Pac-12. Um, there were
Oh,
some
okay.
Oregon softball players, I believe, that were like, the reason I, went to Oregon or went to USC or went to UCLA was to be in the Pac-12 where friends and family can come watch me play and not have to go across the
Well, that's what.
country.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what basically what he said though.
Okay, okay.
But yeah,
But yeah, I think what this does, not to get too much more long-winded on it, the Big Ten's ability to recruit California now is going to be light years ahead of what it used to be. Because, like I said, the reason a lot of these kids were staying in the Pac 12, staying in California, was because all of their games were going to be played up and down the West Coast. And the whole proximity to home factor is almost entirely out of the equation because half of your games are basically going to be played on the opposite side of the country. So now some of the kids that like Michigan has lost to California schools, now maybe they get some more of those kids because their parents will be having to make those trips anyway. So we'll see. But I think you're going to see a major impact on recruiting and a lot more West Coast kids coming to the Midwest. But that's just a theory.
Derek, are we seeing the last question? I'm sorry to be long winded. Are we seeing the budding of a potential UC Arizona rivalry?
I mean,
It's not
the
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 answer
Big
has to
12,
be
the new Big
yes.
12 rivalry.
The Wildcats
It's got to
versus
be
the
yes.
Bearcats. Wildcats,
It's
Bearcats.
it's perfect. It's perfect. I mean, it's just got to be. I mean, this could be history, literally history in the making as we speak,
Correct.
as these realignments go on. And, who knows, 10 years from now, we're talking about the Bearcats, Wildcats, annual matchup.
Correct. Correct. My loser of the week, since I haven't even got to it yet, Tim Anderson. Massive loser.
That's a
Jose,
good one. That's a
I
good one.
mean, if you're going to be the man that drops the gloves first and then end up knocked out on your arse from a rather strong ducking right hook from Jose Ramirez, I mean, we haven't seen a punch like that thrown since Rugnet Odor knocked the sunglasses off of Jose Bautista's face.
That's correct.
But yeah, just absolutely incredible. The Chicago White Skunks, as I like to call them, just culture issues left and right. Lance Lynn, Keenan Middleton bashing the culture upon their trades from the organization. Story coming out about Yasmani Grandal slapping Tim Anderson. And then, obviously, Tim Anderson getting sat down by Jose Ramirez at second base. Just an absolute dumpster fire on the south side of Chicago. And it wasn't all that long ago that they were making fun of the Cubs and their current status as an organization. And I don't think the Chicago White Sox have even made it past the ALDS since the Cubs have won a World Series. I saw an interesting stat. Uh, Unfortunately, can't remember who to attribute it to at this time. The Houston Astros have more playoff wins in the last 5 years than the White Sox do in the last 120. So screw you, Chicago White Sox, you suck. Bob, garbage time takes your money.
Alrighty. Got a big matchup for us in the MLB world this week. It's going to be none other than the Oakland Athletics against the Washington Nationals.
Oh my gosh.
Washington Nationals at home. Um, so you might want to know who are the big names that are going to be on the mound for tomorrow. Johan Adon for the Washington Nationals with a career WAR of negative 1.1, a career ERA of 6.56, and a ERA this season of 4.9 will be on the mound for the Nats. And on the mound for the A's, none other than Paul Blackburn
Big
with a
fan of Paul Blackburn.
4.35 ERA on the season. Let's take a look at the line. There's literally no plus odds in this game. The Oakland Athletics are slightly favored at minus 112 to the minus 104 for the Nats. The over under of this one is at 9 runs. Dennis, a barn burner of epic proportions. What do you got?
Wow. Hold on. I'm looking up something to add here because just curious.
While you're
Because
looking
I
that
Okay,
up,
all right,
Dennis,
never mind. That's
while you're looking
go
that
ahead.
up,
Go ahead, Derek.
last week's performance, or 2 weeks ago, was the Blue Jays and the Angels. It was Lucas Giolito, I believe's first start with the Angels up against Alek Manoah, if I remember the pitching matchup correctly. Um, the Blue Jays won 4-1. The over/under was 8.5. Bob and Dennis both went 2 for 2. I went 1 for 2. So that's that.
Okay. Well, what I was going to look up first of all was I was going to add an over under for cheapest ticket price because this has got to be in the single digits, but it's actually higher than I would have thought. It's $14, at least according to StubHub at the current moment. So yeah, that's never mind. I take that one back. I was picturing like $6 or something to get into this game. Um, it's Thanks for bringing this one to our attention, Bobby. I really appreciate that.
You're so welcome, Dennis.
I just,
Yeah, you can
I
understand why
love
I'm
the
smiling.
selection because I feel like it allows, me and Derek and yourself to just give our best, most solid and confident analysis as possible, given our extensive knowledge of these two teams. I think,
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't know, the Nationals are at home. There's your analysis. We're taking money line picks, right? Well,
No, yeah,
I'll
we're
take the
taking money
Washington
line. Yep.
Nationals.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're taking money
the
line.
Oakland Athletics are a truly horrible team, and the Nationals just swept the Reds. I mean, I had to painfully go through that. The Nationals are not a good team, but they do have a few bright spots. Um, and over under 9 runs, man, I think I'm gonna have to go under simply on the principle that these two teams are not gonna be able to score that many runs. Um, so I'll go with that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're placing any sort of bet or even looking at placing a bet on this game, I would highly recommend maybe asking some friends for assistance
One eight
and
hundred
so they can
gambler.
point you in the right direction. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. Follow the guidelines as your state provides.
Yeah, you're either a degenerate gambler or Phil Mickelson, although that might be one and the same. I'm gonna take the Athletics in the under. I'm a big Paul Blackburn fan. Um, Dude was the Athletics All-Star last year as a rookie, I believe. His
He
story was
was.
the one where the Houston Astros offered to let him fly on their plane because the A's were going to make him fly commercial. Um, so that was a whole story in and of itself. Um, so Paul Blackburn, I'm a big fan of. This game is either going to score 15 runs or 4 runs.
That's
Because
exactly correct. Yes.
because the A's don't really score unless they score, and because I'm riding Paul Blackburn, um, I don't think it's gonna matter. Give me the under and the Athletics.
I like Paulie B as well. I think Adon is just going to get blasted massively, and I'm actually going to take the over. I think that both these pitchers are going to be sloppy, but Paul's just going to be a bit better. And so that's where I'm going with that. Former
Fair.
first round pick by the Chicago Cubs, Paul Blackburn.
Yeah, when did we trade him?
I don't know when you traded him, but you drafted him in 2012.
Hmm.
So just something to know.
Oh, is that when we traded for Dan Heron?
Oh my gosh, Dan Heron. That's a blast from the past. Also
Holy
former Red.
smokes.
Nope, it was when
Wow.
we traded Paul Blackburn and Daniel Vogelbach to the Mariners for Mike Montgomery and Jordan Preece.
Wow, you got fleeced.
So that was Bob, did we get fleeced though? Because Mike Montgomery recorded the final 3 outs of the 2016 World Series.
I feel like I don't know. I feel like that was a wash, but
I think we got the bender of the deal. We got the guy who closed out the World Series.
Okay, all right.
Has Paul Blackburn been to the playoffs?
No.
Can I get a career ERA on Paul Blackburn?
Yeah, 4.5.
Can I get a career WAR on Paul Blackburn?
Uh 1.1 for career, I believe, without having the page up, but at point 0.8 this season.
See, I don't know. Maybe it's the bias in me, but I think the Cubs might have got the bender under the deal for that one. Can I get a career WAR on Mike Montgomery by chance?
You can, Derek, you can. Mike Montgomery, not a current player, I'm guessing anymore. Career WAR of 5.9.
Does it show you what his WAR was in 2016?
I can check.
Now I'm just out from my own curiosity.
That would have been, let's see, 20. What year was that, Derek?
2016.
16.
It might be split into two since he was traded midseason.
Okay. I'm seeing that he had, what was his ERA with the he had a 2.82 ERA with the Cubs that season. And he recorded. I'm not seeing a war broken down,
No problem.
but I am seeing that he in 30 innings pitch he gave up 38 innings pitch he gave up 12 earned and 38 strikeouts in 38 innings.
That's what I'm
So
talking about.
pretty darn good
And a chip. Don't leave out the
stuff
chip,
there.
Bob.
He also absolutely zero saves, but hey,
That's fine.
pretty good.
Yeah. Closed out the World Series. Doesn't get much more high level than that. That'll wrap it up for us this week. Ideally, we'll also be here next week. But you never know. You never know. It's been a while since we've had a 2 week streak, unfortunately.
True.
But with that being said, Bob, feel free to plug the socials.
At Garb Time Takes on X, at Garbage Time Takes on Instagram. You can find the link to our website in the description of this video below. And of course, please feel free to drop a follow and subscribe. Derek, I hear you chuckling. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what it's called now, so we got to go with it.
It,
I got to make sure they know where to find us.
yeah, it's on Twitter. It's on Twitter. As always, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate the support. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and turn the bell on for when we release a new episode of the podcast and whatever small side content gets uploaded on the side. Without further ado, thanks again for watching, and we will hopefully see you next week in 3,
2,
1.
Peace.
Peace.